Hey guys, Zibboyeye or just Zib is fine, and today, I chow down on a huge helping of humble pie. Because in this video, we're talking about Saw X, a movie that proved me wrong. But before we get into how Saw showed me, let's look at the history. To those who saw my Spiral review, consider this a recap. Following 2017's soft reboot Jigsaw, its screenwriters Josh Stolberg and Peter Goldfinger started cooking up their next entry in the series. Their idea? To rewind back to the time frame of the first few films. However, Lionsgate put their plan on pause when Chris Rock rang, wanting to play a game of his own. Thus, Spiral from the Book of Saw was delayed due to COVID. Unfortunately for the studio, they had doubled down on Spiral. It was their largest investment in the series yet. With the cash on the table going cold, Lionsgate didn't want to wait to see if Rock's take would take off. So they greenlit Stolberg and Goldfinger's original idea before Spiral even came out. Smart thinking, as Spiral, the biggest budget Saw, is also the franchise's biggest flop. Director Bousman bid adieu after Spiral. Thus, Kevin Grudert, editor of Saw 1 through 5 and Jigsaw, as well as director of 6 and 7, took his hand in directing once again. A role that concerned me, as the two he oversaw rank lowest in my book. My Book of Saw, if you will. That's still a stupid name. Not to mention the premise didn't ease my worry either. I thought the Saw timeline got so convoluted that going back to it was begging for trouble. Conceptually, I had preferred Jigsaw's and Spiral's distance from it. But I might be in the minority. Fans even gave the writers flack for this approach in Jigsaw, and that was the one more connected to its roots. So what did Saw fans want? I have a vague grasp. From my short time hanging around the Saw subreddit, there were some fans like me, who wanted more original stories to shed the series' common trappings. But I was surprised how many people wanted to see the daisy chain of plot twists and Jigsaw assistance continue and continue after that. Which, considering the quantum leap back, I worried the series would revert to. But then I watched the movie, and I think it's about time I give it another once over, so let's brace for blood and look at Saw X. The story follows John Kramer. Set between Saw 1 and 2, John's death games have earned him notoriety, while his identity as the Jigsaw Killer has eluded authorities. On recommendation from an acquaintance, John pursues experimental treatment to cure his brain cancer. However, returning to the facility after his surgery, he realizes he's been had. Having took John for just another sucker, the gang of scammers soon discover they don't know who they messed with, as their life is put to the test in Jigsaw's games. This is not your usual Saw. While there are a couple of Jigsaw challenges leading up to it, the main game starts around halfway through. It's odd, but not too structurally removed. The story is split, as most Saws have been, but in a different manner. The vast majority of entries intercut between the game and the cops. However, here, there is no detective plot. Once it's game time, it's just that. This is exactly what I wanted from the franchise for so long. And it's as good as I hoped. No outside B-plot, no flashbacks, no escape. A laser-sharp focus on what is Saw. And for a 2-hour runtime, the longest in the series, it surprisingly holds its own. There's always something with character or suspense going on, it never slogs. The pacing is tight, I suspect due to Grudert's experience as editor. Even making these reviews, scrolling through a movie in editing changed my view. I'd start going, oh, I want that scene. And like in school when you feel really cool for flipping to the exact page number? Click. Right there. Seeing a movie in the timeline, even for these little videos, put into perspective narrative timing. So I have to think Grudert's editing gigs helped him direct. On the topic of edits, let's talk about the cuts. Giving us nearly 40 minutes of deleted/extended footage, the cutting room floor lived up to its name. Looking through the act scenes though, I can't say I miss any. I feel a bit weird discussing content that isn't there, but it's a chance to appreciate what we got, post-production trimmed in all the right places. Visually speaking, Saw X returns to a more dingy look. While it's subtle, a fine grain filter overlays the footage. Nick Matthews makes his series debut as director of photography. With his rough in-your-face movement alongside the fast cuts, it's like we went back in time to classic Saw. Contrasting with Spiral's clean, modern look, the messy, dirty motif here better exemplifies the franchise's grunge. The writing didn't disappoint either. Lines and beats strike back in clever payoffs. Also of note, I enjoy the irony in the Sham's ringleader, Dr. Finn Peterson. Under the facade of saving lives, she loots the dying. But in these macabre circumstances, she's the most competent at helping save her associate's skin. It just took man-made maiming machines to make her lie true. Considering this is the 10th installment of a series built on bloodshed, the bar is constantly being raised. And Saw X is up for the challenge. I think this one where a guy must pull out a chunk of his own brain has to be one of the worst. Like up there with the one in Spiral that would leave the player 95% paralyzed even if they won. You gotta be having a pretty bad day to design traps like these. All these tasks take place in one room too, by the way. Like the minimalism of the series premiere proved, if you have a good story, you don't need much more than that. Although I applaud that and the increased attention on the game, the structure still relies on individual tests. I will probably always prefer when the players can more directly impact each other like the first two, but I don't mind it here, because the story doesn't center around the poor lot's survival. Instead, the challenge's value lies in their relation to John and Amanda. It's not game-driven, it's jigsaw-driven. And while now would be the perfect time to cover character, I'm pretty proud of my assessment there, so I'll save that for later. For now, let's check out the callbacks. The premise derives from a flashback in Saw 6 when John's insurance refused to cover an experimental procedure. And it makes sense, I couldn't find any discrepancies with it. That was my biggest concern, that the movie wouldn't fit in the timeline. Many sequels before this struggled with that, but they finally did it. And even fleshed out this one line into all this. I also commend a certain change. In a deleted scene, John interrogates his sham surgeon to find the rest of his crew. That scene omitted, now John just calls a certain someone.
Detective, I could use your assistance in locating some people that are in need of our services.
That's right, Detective Hoffman. Saw 4 through 7 struggled demonstrating Hoffman's contribution to Jigsaw, beyond just an extra pair of hands. So him sniffing out test subjects gives him much more utility. It's a quick interaction, but it really helps. These aspects alone gave me a pleased, but the surprises kept coming. Like with this scene.
That's the elastic statue of flower. That's where the priest chopped the hearts out of their subjects and rolled them down the stairs.
I thought, okay, so a machine's gonna rip some poor sucker's heart out, mimics the sacrifice, I know how this works. Instead though, John lifts merely the statue's design for the trap. You got me. My most pleasant surprise occurs when the first player survives his test. In all the later sequels, whenever the first guy dies, I call my bets, they're all dead. It's a pattern so prevalent in the series. But that now disrupted, I don't know who's gonna make it out. Finally, the game story has suspense again. But likely Saw X's biggest distinction lies in its greater character focus. Shawnee Smith reprises her role as Amanda, planned heir to the Jigsaw name. While it's been 15 years since her last appearance, Smith shackles hapless subjects like she hasn't skipped a beat. Amanda is one of my favorite characters in all of horror. I was over the moon to see her return. And her good use too. Seeing her past self in Gabriella, a drug addict, Amanda's empathy causes clash between her and John. This is a pivotal time too. The reality of John's death looms ever closer now. It's the first time Amanda realizes she'll have to pick up the mantle pretty soon. All around a ripe source for drama. As a side note, I hope the next movie brings Hoffman into the fray. His and Amanda's one-scene rivalry was my favorite part of Saw 6. I'd love to see that more developed. And of course there's Saw's sickly psycho himself, John Kramer. Tobin Bell returns to his most iconic role. With such a personal motive backing the character, he gives it his all in a shining performance. I learned that often in the series, Bell pens his own lines. Another quirk that spoke to me lies in a comment by Shawnee Smith.
These are the first real, you could call them traps. I know Tobin wouldn't. Challenges.
Everyone calls them traps, even me. But would we do so if it weren't for the reverse bear trap? Or a tape comparing this one to a Venus fly trap? We forget it's kinda just a nickname that stuck. Because these are designed to test, first and foremost. So for Bell to understand this demonstrates his in-tune grasp of the character. Of course, the equally adept script helps too. One of my favorite aspects is that not everything goes to John's plan. Finally. Saw 4 On painted John as a psychic supercomputer who could calculate events from years ahead to a T. So I'm elated to see he's fallible, he's human again, and thus empathetic in a narrative that needs it. Not only that, but the film features the most morally insecure Jigsaw has ever been. Thinking he is cured, the old man sketches a device, but has second thoughts. John believes he helps people by putting them through these tests. However, if he truly believes that, why consider hanging it up? Isn't newfound health the best opportunity to continue his mission? This scene further highlights the ironic relationship between John and Jigsaw, illness and duty. During a medical visit, a physician suggests this.
My advice? Retire. But sometimes those who accept their fate have an easier time.
Easier time. What? Dying?
However, once scammed, the hope-broken cancer patient is only pushed deeper into his alter ego.
I am dying, but our work's not gonna end.
Jigsaw exists from the ticking clock. It suggests that while John props up altruistic intent to shield his actions, these games in reality are driven by his desire to supplant lost time with purpose. Saw X goes to great places with the characters, and that extends to the ending, so spoilers until this time, and let's get to it. Parker, who claimed he came back for his stolen money, reveals he was in on the scheme. His presence here due to Dr. Peterson's call. Upon retrieving his gun, he unchains the doctor. The two then force John in Peterson's place. Peterson cements herself in Saw history here. She relishes her power over John.
Oh, come on, John. Do the scary voice. I'd like to play a game.
Between her lies and turnabout, she's the most cunning survivor in Saw history. But she's also the cruelest, offing one of her surviving assistants out of greed and spite. She's an excellent foil to go up against Jigsaw. Finding Carlos, a young boy John met earlier, outside, the woman binds him with John in the same test. Did I mention cruel? That's insane! They put a kid in a Saw trap! It's like, yeah, this is the 10th movie, but we've got some new tricks up our sleeve. Even though I knew John was going to make it out, I was still on the edge of my seat the whole climax. It turns out John knew of Parker's deception. Peterson and Parker must fight for air in their final test. I appreciate the intricacy in John's plan. Had Parker complied, John would chain him on the other end of Peterson's game. However, upon his resistance, John and Amanda played to his perceived reversal, expecting the thieves to place them in this bloodboarding trap as both its players can survive. As the final touch, as Peterson and Parker refuse to cooperate and greedily search for their loot, they're lured into a scenario where one must die. Like I said before, in the past, John's schemes have typically come to fruition as intended. It's unbelievable when a string of events all go right. However, his plan here functions through a thoroughly thought out set of contingencies that makes the plot's unfolding more credible. Added to the unforeseen variable, Carlos, the script preserves John's intelligence while maintaining his fallibility. On top of that, the events hold up to John's philosophy. John believes he doesn't kill since he allows his subjects the chance to live. So I'm usually unfond of the traps where someone has to die. They oppose his doctrine. However, it works here. This gas game could have been completely averted. It exists to punish Peterson and Parker should they lack remorse. Peterson kills Parker to live another day while John, Amanda, and little Carlos walk off into the sunrise. And that was Saw X. Hey, for once they didn't have an arbitrary reference to the bathroom. It really did turn over a new leaf.
Out of all the men to cheat, you picked John Kramer?
You know what? After that ride, you earned it. Looking ahead to Saw 11... Oh yeah, I guess I could have been calling this Saw 10. I don't know, I think Saw X sounds cooler. You know, I should have called it Socks just to upset people. I'm gonna fish for engagement. Comment below what you call it. Ooh, I may have started a war zone down there. Anyways, looking ahead to Saw 11, I hope Peterson returns. Light-footing around spoilers, John's plan acts as a means of comeuppance in Saw 7. It and others largely affirm his ideology. So I'd like to see consequences to Peterson's win. She killed someone to live. Does that not validate her selfishness? So I'm hoping this is the start of a narrative that concedes the flaws in Jigsaw's beliefs. And yeah, I'm looking forward to where the series goes from here. While fans will recognize some familiar tropes, the film embraces new directions that will keep even the most fervent Saw fan on their toes. John's character deepens immensely in a compelling narrative that is empathetic towards but not uncritical of him. Wrapping up in, to be blunt, the best ending to one of these in years, Saw X is a brutal yet sensitive sequel that returns the series to a dignity I welcome back with open arms. Hey, and for once I didn't have a parody skit in a new Saw review. I really did turn over a new leaf.
That's what you think.
Of course. I've kept that TV down there for 4 years?
It's the return of Jigsaw, so what better time for the return of Jigsaw? You're gonna have story points in your reviews again. No wait, don't press that.
What? Dude couldn't even afford new footage. So there are two things I'm embarrassed of. Him, well, much of my older stuff in general, and my outburst at the end of my Spiral review. And what was that idea? A movie entirely about John Kramer. No! I can't be optimistic for Saw X. This was partially in lieu of my previous video. Looking back, I felt I was a bit too soft on Blair Witch 2016. So to assure I wouldn't miss my mark next time, I performed rather intensely. At the same time, I truly felt my given sentiment. It's fine I expressed my doubt, but regardless of the final product, I wish I didn't act like the sequel would be a surefire flop. If anything, Saw X showed me that nothing is set in stone. A writer or director may lend their hand to a movie you dislike, then you'll find their name on one you love. Gladly proven wrong, I've been Zibboyeye, or just Zib is fine, and thank you for watching. Zibbo bye bye!